The Secret Habits of Intelligent People. What Smart Minds Do Differently. Narrated for English through Great Stories. There is a moment, and perhaps you have felt it, when you are sitting across from someone, or reading something, or simply watching a person move through the world, and you think there is something different about them. Not louder, not faster, not more confident in the way we usually imagine confidence, just different, quietly, remarkably different. We spend a great deal of time trying to understand intelligence. We measure it with tests, rank it in classrooms, celebrate it in laboratories and boardrooms. But for all our measuring, we often miss the most important part. Intelligence is not a number. It is not a degree framed on a wall. It is a collection of habits, quiet, daily, deeply personal choices about how to engage with the world. This is a story about those habits, not a list of tricks to memorize, not a set of rules to follow blindly. This is an invitation to understand how certain minds, curious, humble, relentlessly thoughtful minds, approach their days differently, and why that difference changes everything. Settle in. This will take some time, and that, as you will soon discover, is exactly the point. Chapter 1. The Better Question. In 1928, a Scottish biologist named Alexander Fleming returned to his laboratory after a summer holiday. His petri dishes had been left unattended, and many were contaminated with mold. Any other scientist might have felt frustration, cleaned them up, and started again. Fleming felt something different: curiosity. He asked a question that most people would never think to ask. Why is the bacteria dying around the mold? That question, small, quiet, and utterly overlooked by the world, led to the discovery of penicillin, a question that saved hundreds of millions of lives. Not a genius calculation, not a grand experiment planned years in advance, just a better question, asked at the right moment by a mind that was trained to ask them. Intelligent people understand something profound. The quality of your life is largely determined by the quality of the questions you ask, not just to others, but to yourself. Every morning, without realizing it, we ask our minds a question. Most people ask, "What do I have to do today?" The highly intelligent person asks, "What is the most important thing I could do today, and why does it actually matter?" Better questions unlock different kinds of thinking. Instead of asking, "Why does this always happen to me?" a question that turns the mind inward and helpless, the intelligent person asks, "What patterns am I not seeing here?" Instead of "Who is to blame?" they ask, "What can be done?" The question shapes the search, and the search shapes what you find. There is also a courage embedded in asking real questions, because real questions admit ignorance. They say, "I do not fully understand this yet." In a world that rewards the performance of confidence, sitting with a genuine question is a small act of bravery. The intelligent person has learned that this bravery is not weakness. It is the very beginning of wisdom. Chapter 2. The Gift of Being Wrong. There is a particular kind of pain that comes with being wrong. It is not physical, but it can feel very close to it. Something tightens in the chest, a warmth rises to the face, the mind scrambles, defending, explaining, redirecting. We are wired, by nature, to protect our beliefs as though they were our bodies. To be wrong feels, in some primal way, like a threat. Intelligent people have learned to feel that sensation and move toward it anyway. Not just to suffer, not for the sake of suffering, but because they have discovered a remarkable truth. Being wrong means you have just learned something, and learning something means you are now less wrong than you were before. Being corrected is not a defeat, it is progress. The psychologist Carol Dweck spent decades studying the difference between two kinds of people: those who believe their intelligence is fixed, who they are is who they will always be, and those who believe intelligence can be developed. She called these the fixed mindset and the growth mindset. The fixed mindset person avoids being wrong because it threatens their identity. The growth mindset person welcomes it because it feeds their development. But here is what often gets missed in this conversation. Embracing being wrong is not the same as having no convictions. Intelligent people hold strong views. They just hold them lightly. They are willing to update. They treat their beliefs not as sacred possessions, but as working hypotheses, best guesses made with the information available and open to revision the moment better information arrives. Think about the people in your life who you admire most intellectually, the ones who make you feel, after a conversation, that the world is larger than it was before. Almost certainly they share this quality. They can say the words, "I was wrong about that," without flinching. Those 4 words, spoken honestly, are among the most intelligent things a human being can say. Chapter 3. The Rarest Resource. Many people check their phones dozens of times every day. Each notification, each little buzz or blow is an invitation to leave whatever you are doing and go somewhere else. And most of the time we accept that invitation without even thinking. We have become, in many ways, extraordinarily skilled at the art of distraction. William James, the great American philosopher and psychologist, wrote in 1890, well before the age of smartphones, well before social media, that the faculty of voluntarily bringing back a wandering attention over and over again is the very root of judgment, character, and will. He called it the education of attention. He said it was the most important gift education could offer a person. Intelligent people treat attention as the most valuable resource they possess. Not time, though time matters, attention. Because you can have all the hours in the world and still produce nothing of value if your attention is scattered. They are deliberate about what they give their focus to. They design their environment to minimize interruption. They create conditions where deep thinking can actually occur. The writer Cal Newport calls this deep work, the ability to focus without distraction on a mentally challenging task. He argues convincingly that this skill is becoming increasingly rare, at the same time it is becoming increasingly valuable. The world is optimized for shallow, fragmented thinking. The person who masters focused attention holds a profound advantage, not because they are more intelligent by nature, but because they are giving their intelligence room to breathe. This is not about becoming a monk. It is not about rejecting the modern world or living without technology. It is about making conscious choices. It is about pausing, just occasionally, and asking, is this where I truly want my attention to go right now? That pause, that small moment of agency, is the beginning of a very different kind of life. Chapter 4. Thinking in Systems. Imagine a bathtub with a tap running and a drain open. Whether the water level rises, falls, or stays the same depends entirely on the relationship between two things: the rate water flows in and the rate it flows out. This is, at its simplest, a system. And almost everything in the world, economies, relationships, ecosystems, organizations, even human emotions, can be understood this way. Most people react to events. Something happens, they respond to that thing. Something else happens, they respond to that. Life, from this angle, is a series of unconnected incidents. But the intelligent person looks beneath the events for patterns. They ask, what structure is producing these outcomes? What forces, invisible but real, are shaping this situation? They think in system. The engineer and author Donella Meadows spent her life studying this kind of thinking. She observed that the most persistent problems in the world, poverty, environmental destruction, recurring conflict, are often not caused by isolated failures or bad individuals. They are caused by systems with deeply embedded structures that reliably produce those problems, regardless of who is in charge at any given moment. This insight changes how you see nearly everything. A struggling student is not just lazy. What system around them is failing? A company in decline is not just badly managed. What feedback loops are preventing adaptation? Systems thinking does not excuse individual responsibility. It expands it. It asks you to take responsibility not just for your actions, but for the structures you participate in and perpetuate. On a more personal level, intelligent people apply systems thinking to their own lives. They notice that their mood is not random, it follows patterns. Their productivity is not arbitrary. It is shaped by their routines, their sleep, their relationships, their environment. Rather than fighting each bad day as if it appeared from nowhere, they look for the lever, the small structural change that produces lasting improvement. Chapter 5. Reading differently. Reading, for most of us, is a form of consumption. We take in words. We absorb information. We move from page to page, chapter to chapter. And when we finish, we feel, if the book was good, that we know more than we did before. This is reading. It is valuable. But there is another kind of reading, and it is what intelligent people do. They read in conversation with the text. They argue with the author. They underline not just what they agree with, but what disturbs them, what challenges them, what they are not sure is right. They write in margins. They ask as they read, what is this person actually claiming? What evidence do they offer? What are they assuming? What are they leaving out? Reading, for them, is an active, almost combative act. The philosopher Mortimer Adler called this analytical reading, and he believed it was one of the highest intellectual skills a person could develop. He wrote that to read a great book is to have a conversation with one of the greatest minds who ever lived. But a conversation requires you to respond, to push back, to bring yourself to the table. A passive reader is barely half a conversation. Toni Morrison, one of the greatest novelists in American history, understood this deeply. She was not only a gifted writer, but also a careful reader and editor who believed that reading was an act of creation, not just reception. She once said that a reader brings something of themselves to every page. For Morrison, reading widely and deeply did not simply inform her writing. It shaped it, stretched it, and gave it the power to say things no one else could say. Intelligent readers also read widely. Not just within their field of expertise, not just within genres they already love. A scientist who reads poetry develops a different kind of sensitivity. A historian who reads economics sees the past with different eyes. A novelist who reads philosophy writes with different depth. The breadth of what you read becomes the breadth of how you think. And perhaps most importantly, they revisit. They understand that a book read at 20 will mean something entirely different when read at 40. The book has not changed, they have. And each time they return to a great work, they find something new. Not because the words are different, but because they themselves have grown enough to see what was always there, waiting to be discovered. Chapter 6. Sitting with Discomfort. Every difficult problem carries with it an emotional atmosphere. Confusion feels uncomfortable. Uncertainty feels threatening. The feeling of not knowing, of holding an unresolved question in your mind, creates a kind of psychological tension that the brain desperately wants to relieve. And so most of us reach for the first available answer, not necessarily the best one, simply to make the discomfort stop. The poet John Keats had a name for the opposite of this tendency. He called it negative capability, the ability to remain in uncertainty and doubt without any irritable reaching after fact and reason. He noticed it in Shakespeare, who could inhabit the minds of murderers and kings and lovers and fools without needing to resolve them into a single truth. Keats believed this capacity was essential not just for art, but for understanding. Intelligent people have developed a kind of emotional tolerance for the unresolved. They can hold a difficult question open for days, weeks, sometimes years, turning it over gently, not forcing a conclusion, trusting that clarity will come when it is ready. This is not passivity. It requires enormous discipline. It is the discipline of patience, of trusting the process of thought itself. We see this in great creative work. Darwin sat with his theory for over 20 years before publishing it, not from timidity, but from a deep commitment to getting it right and a willingness to live inside the question until the answer was truly ready. Einstein described his best ideas not as sudden strikes of lightning, but as long, patient journeys through uncertain terrain. The lesson is not to avoid decisive thinking. It is to resist the temptation of jumping to conclusions too soon. To notice when you are reaching for an answer not because you have found it, but because the discomfort of not knowing has become unbearable. The intelligent person learns to distinguish between these two experiences and to stay a little longer in the fire of not yet knowing. Chapter 7. Intentional Rest. We live in a culture that has made busyness into a virtue. To be busy is to be important. To rest is somehow to fall behind. We wear our exhaustion like a badge of honor, compete over who slept less, who worked more, who squeezed the most activity into the fewest hours. And in doing so, we have missed something that scientists, artists, and philosophers have long understood. The resting mind is still working. Scientists have discovered something surprising. The mind does not simply stop when we stop focusing. When we daydream, when we walk, when we shower, or sit quietly by a window watching the rain, the brain is still working. Quietly, in the background, it is sorting through memories, making connections between ideas, and solving problems we did not even know we were still carrying. Rest, it turns out, is one of the mind's most productive states. The chemist Auguste Kekulé discovered the ring-shaped structure of benzene, a breakthrough that transformed organic chemistry, not at his desk, not in his laboratory, but in a dream. He had been working on the problem for years with intense focus. The answer came in a moment of rest, when his conscious mind stepped aside and his deeper intelligence was finally free to speak. Intelligent people understand that rest is not the absence of work. It is a different kind of work. They schedule it with the same seriousness they schedule their most important tasks. They go for long walks without podcasts. They take naps without guilt. They sit in silence without reaching for their phone. They have learned to trust what happens in the spaces between effort. There is also an emotional dimension to intentional rest that goes beyond productivity. The person who rests well is calmer, more patient, less reactive. They see situations more clearly because they are not operating in a state of constant exhaustion. Rest is not a reward you earn after doing enough. Rest is the foundation upon which everything else is built, and the intelligent person knows this down to their bone. Chapter 8. Connecting the Dots. In 1440, Johannes Gutenberg combined two existing technologies: the screw press, used for centuries to make wine and olive oil, and the metal stamp, used by goldsmiths to imprint designs, and created the printing press. Neither technology was new. Neither had been invented by Gutenberg. What he invented was the connection between them, and that connection changed the course of human civilization. This is where some of the most powerful intelligence lives, not in the mastery of any single domain, but in the ability to see the invisible threads connecting different domains. The historian Stephen Johnson, in his study of great innovations, found that the most transformative ideas in human history almost always came from the same source, what he called the adjacent possible, the fertile territory where different fields of knowledge meet and speak to one another. Ada Lovelace, a mathematician who lived in 19th century England, offers another remarkable example. Working alongside the inventor Charles Babbage, she was the first person to see that his computing machine could do far more than calculate numbers. She imagined it composing music, producing language, and creating art. Her vision came not from mathematics alone, but from the meeting point of science and imagination. In a time when those two worlds rarely spoke to each other, she built a bridge between them. Leonardo da Vinci was perhaps the greatest practitioner of this art who ever lived. He studied anatomy not only to paint more truthfully, but because the mechanics of the human body fascinated him as an engineer. He studied the flight of birds not merely for beauty, but because he believed, correctly, that understanding their wings would unlock the principles of human flight. His notebooks are a map of a mind that refused to respect the borders between disciplines. Intelligent people do the same. They gather ideas from many different fields and carry them like tools, ready to shed light on problems in unexpected ways. The practical invitation in all of this is simple, though not easy. Become genuinely curious about things outside your usual world. Read the book that is not in your category. Have the conversation with the person whose work seems unrelated to yours. Visit the gallery. Attend the lecture. Take the course that seems impractical. You are not wasting time. You are building the latticework, filling the spaces from which new connections will one day spring. Chapter 9. The Edge of the Map. In the ancient world, cartographers faced a recurring problem. Their maps ran out before the world did. Beyond the known coastlines, beyond the explored territories, there were regions about which nothing was certain. And so mapmakers would write along those edges, in Latin, hic sunt dracone, here be dragon. An honest acknowledgement that beyond this point we do not know. The philosopher Socrates, widely regarded as one of the wisest men who ever lived, claimed his wisdom consisted of one thing: knowing that he knew nothing. His contemporaries, the sophists, the politicians, the rhetoricians, all spoke with great confidence about many things. Socrates was confident only about the extent of his own ignorance, and this, paradoxically, made him the wisest of all. Psychologists David Dunning and Justin Kruger demonstrated in a now famous series of experiments what many thoughtful people had long suspected. Those who know the least about a subject are often the most confident about it. Conversely, as genuine expertise deepens, confidence is often tempered by an ever-expanding awareness of complexity. The more you truly know, the more vividly you see the edges of your own map. Intelligent people maintain an honest, ongoing inventory of their own ignorance. They know which subjects they understand well, which they understand superficially, and which they do not understand at all, but have mistakenly assumed they do. This kind of intellectual self-awareness is extraordinarily rare. It requires honesty, humility, and a genuine lack of attachment to appearing knowledgeable, which, in a world that rewards confident performance, is harder than it sounds. There is something deeply freeing in this once you accept it. The person who knows the edges of their map is never truly lost, because they know where the reliable ground ends. They say, "I don't know," easily, generously, without shame. They ask more questions. They listen more carefully. They are less interested in being right than in being accurate. And accuracy, over time, is a far more powerful possession than a reputation for certainty. Here, too, is where intelligence and character meet. Because knowing what you don't know requires more than cognitive skill. It requires honesty, the willingness to look at yourself clearly, to resist the comfortable illusion of competence, to say, "This is where my knowledge genuinely ends, and beyond this I am only guessing." That kind of honesty is the beginning of real trust in yourself and from others. Closing reflection, the long game. We have traveled together through 9 habits, 9 ways that certain minds choose every day to engage differently with the world around them. Better questions, the embrace of being wrong, the fierce protection of attention, systems thinking, deep active reading, the tolerance for discomfort, intentional rest, the connection of unrelated ideas, and the profound, liberating humility of knowing what one does not know. None of these habits arrived fully formed in the people we admire. They were built slowly through practice and failure and recommitment. Fleming did not ask his great question because he was born a genius. He asked it because he had spent years training himself to notice what others dismissed. Darwin did not sit with his theory for 20 years because waiting came naturally to him. He chose patience over and over through doubt and pressure and the temptation of premature certainty. What all of these habits share at their deepest level is a particular orientation toward the world, a stance of genuine openness, an acknowledgement that reality is larger, more complex, and more interesting than any single mind can fully grasp. And rather than finding that terrifying, the intelligent person finds it wonderful. The world is inexhaustible. There is always more to learn. There is always further to go. There is also something deeply ethical about these habits, because a person who asks real questions listens more carefully to other people's answers. A person who embraces being wrong treats others with more patience when they are wrong. A person who protects their attention gives more of it, fully, genuinely, to the people they love. Intelligence developed this way is not a competitive advantage over others. It is a way of being in deeper service to them. And perhaps this is the final, quietest insight of all. The most intelligent people you will ever meet are not the ones who make you feel small. They are the ones who make you feel seen, who ask your questions no one else has thought to ask, who listen to your answer as though it truly matters, who make the conversation larger than it was when it began. Intelligence at its finest is generous. So as you step back into your day, into the noise, the demands, the endless pull of obligations and distractions, carry something small with you. Not a list of rules, not a checklist of habits to perform, just a question. One honest, open, quietly curious question about something you have been meaning to understand more deeply. Ask it. Sit with it. Trust that the asking is already the beginning. Because intelligence is not a destination, it is a direction. And every single one of us at any point in our lives can choose to turn and face it. The world is waiting for what you will discover. The question is, are you paying attention? Thank you for listening to English Through Great Stories. This has been The Secret Habits of Intelligent People, What Smart Minds Do Different. Until next time, keep listening, keep wondering, and keep growing.